Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for joining the session. I welcome every one of you. And inshallah, today is the last session for the course. I will finish the last part of the discussion, and also I will brief you about the format for the final exam. If you can recall, we discussed about topic 6, define riba. We have seen various reasons why riba is considered to be harmful to the economy, to the society, to the moral, social, economy, and many aspects of life. Therefore, the Islamic banking and finance operate without riba. And we have seen the common models used under the Islamic banking and finance. In particular, we talk about the debt or trade financing contracts. Under the debt and trade financing contracts, we have murabahah and also baik bitaman ajil contract. And then another contract commonly used by the Islamic banking and finance is the equity financing contracts, covering another two major contracts, namely musyarakah and mudarabah contracts. Islamic economists favor for Islamic banking and finance to use the equity-based contracts because from economic perspective, that would create real economic activities. On the other side, for the Islamic banking and financial institutions, looking from business perspective, they favor the debt or trade financing contracts because that's easier for them. We talk about the low risk, the better liquidity, the easier management. And in fact, there are many studies that have been undertaken to show over the course of few decades how most of the revenues generated by Islamic banks in particular come from debt or trade financing rather than equity financing. Today, we want to move from that discussion about Islamic banking and finance into this discussion that is on Islamic social finance. First, we need to understand how different is Islamic social finance compared to the conventional understanding of Islamic finance or Islamic banking and finance. How different are they? Right, let's first look at the definition of Islamic social finance. The third one here, this is the definition of Islamic social finance. Before that, let's look at what is the definition of finance. We can define finance an activity or activities involving the allocation of financial resources over space and time under conditions of risk and uncertainty. There are risks because we talk about investment, we talk about future returns, risk. Therefore, there are some degrees of uncertainty in financial investment. And the purpose of finance is to expect for better returns, especially to the shareholders or the investors. So that's basically the general definition of finance. So when we say about the management of financial resources, it's involved management of money, and this would include the flow of money, right, involving activities like investment, lending or borrowing, budgeting, saving and investment or forecasting. These are among other things that you do in finance. Over the years, people find there is a problem in finance because finance is too much about generating return to the shareholders. And in doing that, it creates harmful effect to the society. By harmful effect, For example, if you can recall our discussion about the harmful effect of riba on morality, right, on income inequality. In fact, sometimes when people only care about profits, they don't care in what sort of investment the money or the loan given is for. For example, whether it's involved heavy pollution industry, as long as the bank can see potential returns, they would approve and support those kind of investment. So over the years, the effect of finance have been very harmful to the society, to the environment, and to the planet at large. Therefore, there is a movement or evolution in the public consciousness. And this consciousness give rise to what we call here as the social finance over here. What do we mean by social finance? Here we can see the big difference in terms of the definition between the meaning of finance and social finance. Here I define social finance involving the allocation of financial resources over space and time under conditions of risk and uncertainty for positive results and outcomes to the society and environment. Now the concern have been focused on the society and the environment. It's not purely based on returns or profit only to the shareholders. Therefore, social finance take into account, very common you find this term, the triple bottom line target. Triple bottom line target. People would summarize this triple bottom line as triple P's: people, planet, and profits. So it's not just social finance, therefore would not solely about generating profits. But when you want to generate profit, you need to take care the people and the planet. Therefore, there is a movement such as the green economy. You have green bond or green sukuk today in Islamic social finance, responsible investment, value investment, ethical investment. Those are certain terms that we can relate to this concept of social finance. Now, social finance may not be fully Islamic. Therefore, Islamic economists or Islamic finance experts came out with the concept of Islamic social finance. So here, I define the Islamic social finance to refer to the Sharia compliant management and allocation of financial resources and, over time and space under the conditions of risk and uncertainty for realizing the maqasid al-Sharia. So this is the general objective of Islamic social finance. What makes Islamic social finance to be different is the first part here, it should be done in compliance with the Sharia. The management and the allocation of the financial resources should be in line with the Sharia rules, regulations, ethics, and so on. And it is not simply to generate profit, but to achieve the maqasid al-Sharia. Therefore, the bottom line under the Islamic social finance is to realize welfare and al-falah, right, to the participants and those who are affected by the activities under Islamic social finance. Al-falah could be very specific to Muslims in particular, because we defined al-falah earlier, because al-falah leads to success in the hereafter also. That's ultimately our objective. But to the non-believers, Islamic social finance also creates value to them or provide value to them because it takes care of the welfare of the people, the society, and the planet. And it is also done in an ethical manner. So these are three important definitions that I hope you can understand. Now, with this understanding, moving to the next part, we need to understand here the issues that give rise to Islamic social finance. First, realize there is issues in Islamic finance related to social welfare. How so? Let's try to understand here. There are the following points. If you can recall, the ideal of Islamic finance and the reality of it is very far apart, especially after many years of the realization of Islamic finance. What do I mean here? When Islamic economists came up with the idea of Islamic finance, I'm not talking about Islamic social finance yet. I'm talking about Islamic finance. This is the critique. Islamic economists, Islamic finance is not just about generating profit with Islamic compliant ways. It's not just about that. Islamic finance should also takes care about social welfare. That's the ideal. That's where the word ideal here comes in. Because many of Islamic financial institutions, such as Islamic Bank, Takaful, right, they are corporate institutions. They are business entities. Therefore, they are profit-oriented and they are profit maximizers. They want to maximize profit. Most of the profits goes to the shareholders. In that operations, there are many critiques about the lack of concern by Islamic financial institution over social welfare. Then come this move, the CSR. CSR, corporate social responsibility, is actually a response to critiques to corporations that only concerned about generating profit for the shareholders without regard to society and the planet. So you can see then, especially in 1970s, 1980s, there is more conscious among the corporations to be responsible corporate citizen. Corporations, firms, they want to show that they are responsible corporate citizens. Then we have the term corporate social responsibilities. This idea was also embraced by many Islamic financial institutions. We admit and we acknowledge that Islamic financial institutions such as Islamic Bank, they have played many positive roles on corporate social responsibilities, where they, under corporate social responsibilities, they would use some of the profit generated to support many good causes such as for health, environment, welfare, and many others. And this is a good gesture from the corporations, including Islamic financial institutions. But this is not the main goals or objective of the institutions. Their main objective as business entity is still to generate profits for the shareholders. Some critics even claim that, these corporations sometimes they give CSR on with their right hand, but they damage the environment with their left hand. You do the damage on one side, then you show your good gesture with the other hand. So that's not a good practice because you are not purely good in that sense. Because of this, we can say CSR is not a holistic approach to address the issue of social welfare and environment. And just to add further, how Islamic financial institutions lack in terms of providing social welfare, because they are profit-oriented institutions, their customers are only those bankable Bankable here means that clients that, according to the bank, they have some credit worthiness. For example, if this client apply for loan, the bank would say this client is able to repay the loan without problems. So that's one example of how people is considered as bankable. The poor people, they are not bankable, they are non-bankable. That's why many poor people, they don't have access to credit. Number one, they are poor, they don't have a good job, they don't have income statement. Without income statement, you cannot apply easy loan. Bank in general don't really feel high confidence that you are a good client, good customer, good paymaster. So bank would not deal with people without money. That's as simple as it goes. So what happened to this group? They have been neglected by financial institutions, including Islamic banking and financial institutions. So that's the issue. Then come the question, if Islamic banking and finance are so serious about social welfare, why they neglect the non-bankable? They should not. That's the critique. As I mentioned earlier, they are profit-oriented, so they only want to deal with those bankable clients. All right, so that's another critique. And this is the critique that we have mentioned earlier. Islamic financial institutions preference on debt and trade financing. Because of high margin, they can make quick gain as the middleman function, because they can remember murabahah, baik bertaman ajal contract, they become the middleman. They just charge more, charge the profit margin, and take advantage from the gap in the transaction. So this is also not healthy to the economy. Now, these are the critique to Islamic financial institutions. To improve the situation, now scholars argue that Islamic banking and finance are not enough. They are profit-oriented institutions. They can also be another set of institutions that we can call them as Islamic social finance organizations. Islamic social finance organizations. What are these organizations? Here are some of the common types of organizations that you will find under the discussion of Islamic social finance organizations. What are they? The first one is zakat institutions. I think zakat institution is well known. In Malaysia, we have many zakat institutions based on state religious department. Every state has their own zakat management institutions. So that's considered as one form of Islamic social finance organizations. Then we have Waqaf institutions. This is another set of institutions considered as part of the Islamic social finance organizations. There are many Waqaf organizations that would collect assets, funds, and will use these assets and funds for the Waqaf cause. Maybe the Waqaf is to support orphans, to support old people, to support disabled people, or to support or provide free education and so on. So those are some activities that we commonly find under the Waqaf activities. Another aspect of organizations under the Islamic social finance is the cooperatives. In Malay, we can call this as koperasi. Remember, I'm talking about Islamic one. The Islamic one means that all these institutions, their management must be done in line with the Sharia. Cooperatives atau koperasi, Islamic one, is an example of Islamic social finance organizations. In UIA, we have UIA cooperatives. Some mosques also establish their own cooperatives, and cooperative usually would run a business, and from the proceed of the business, it will go back to the participants of that cooperative. And then we also have another example, microfinance institutions. In Malaysia, the famous one, whether you want to say Islamic or not really Islamic, or not 100% Islamic, Amanah Ikhtiar Malaysia is one example of microfinance. In Bangladesh, the famous microfinance, Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, is one example of microfinance. However, Grameen Bank is not an Islamic one because it's did charge small amount of riba. It's not an example of Islamic, but that's a famous one. So microfinance is also considered as a form of social finance organization. And then we have many other fintech related organization, and usually this fintech, they would use the ICT, the internet, to crowdfund, to collect funds. And this crowdfunding in general can be divided into these 4 subcategories. Crowdfunding can be donation-based crowdfunding, reward-based crowdfunding, lending-based crowdfunding, and also equity-based crowdfunding. Donation-based crowdfunding is, if you are familiar with Scholar Fund, if you heard Scholar Fund, SKOLAH, Scholar Fund. Scholar Fund is a form of donation-based crowdfunding that students can pitch their case so that people would donate, sponsor for the students to achieve their crowdfunding goals. For example, a student may say he needs another 1,000 ringgit to pay for his final year fees. He doesn't have the money. So he would pitch his case, people would watch the video, people may like to help him, and people would donate some money until the student gets to the target and then achieve that goal. Scholar Fund provide that. If you don't have money, you can visit scholarfund.com. Right? By the way, the founder of Scholar Fund, Shamil, he was my former FRE student. So he is one of the founder of Scholar Fund, and that's an example of donation-based crowdfunding. They only charge or get some returns for the management side, to pay some salaries, and so, but the rest of the money would goes for the purpose of the donation. For example, under Scholar Fund, the purpose is to support students who are in need of money to finish their study. Reward-based crowdfunding is another example. Sometimes a new joint venture or a new startup, they need some money to start their business. They would pitch their project on the platform, on a crowdfunding platform, and they would say those who sponsor a certain amount, for example, will get certain reward. This reward, don't expect big reward. Usually they will give t-shirt or maybe a few sample of their products, simple one, just as a gesture of gratitude for your sponsorship. Right? That's an example of reward-based crowdfunding. Lending-based can be, because we talk about Islamic example, so it should not be based on riba. You cannot charge interest for lending-based crowdfunding. They need to use the Islamic model, maybe based on murabahah, baik bitaman ajil or that kind. Right? So this is another example. And equity-based is like ATIS is an example of crowdfunding that run some project based on equity. They build housing for poor people, in particular in Indonesia, and they crowdfund the capital for the project. They will build the house based on the money that they get, and those who give the money They are like the shareholder because these are the equity base. You own share in that project. And when they sell that project to the government so that the government can surrender that housing project to those poor recipients, government will pay certain money to this crowdfunding with some profit, and then they will divide the profit to the shareholders. So this is an example of equity base. These are some examples of various forms of Islamic social finance. Some of them are not even have any concern about profit making. They are non-profit oriented. For example, in the case of zakat, wakaf, these are non-profit oriented. In terms of cooperatives, cooperative needs to generate profit, but it's not their main goals. Profit is still important. When we say non-profit, doesn't mean profit is not important. It's still important, but that's not their main goal. They have other goal, quasi goal. And crowdfunding based social finance can either be profit oriented or non-profit oriented. Donation based is fully non-profit oriented social finance. But if it is lending based, equity based, these are slightly profit oriented social finance. So I hope you can see the spectrum of various social finance organizations. And Islamic social finance, if you put the word Islamic there, they should be based on Sharia rules and regulation. Now, the last slide for this topic, to conclude the discussion about Islamic social finance, what's the future now? We talk about Islamic banking and finance. Now we talk about Islamic social finance. So the first one, shouldn't the defaults of Islamic finance concerns about society and the environment? The answer is yes. That should be the default. However, because they are profit-oriented, society and environment become secondary nature to them. Profit become the first goal. And because of that, scholars now have to rethink how to do the correction, and one of the suggestion, one of the new trend is the emergence of this Islamic social finance organizations. That's because of the problems we find in the practice of Islamic finance. The second point, will Islamic finance and Islamic social finance exist as two separate areas? If the answer is yes, it means that Islamic finance will continue doing what it wants to do, that is to make profit for the shareholders, and maybe do some CSR as a good gesture. Another set of organizations, Islamic social finance organization, need to do the pure work expected from Islamic organizations to take care of welfare and so on. Right? If they exist as two separate entities, that means they will go with their own ways. Or Islamic social finance means corrections are now taking place. This is the alternative to the question. Meaning that if Islamic social finance is the corrections, is the realization by Islamic social finance, Islamic financial institutions, players, they realize that they are not really taking care welfare as expected by public and the scholars. Now, Islamic social finance would provide the avenue for Islamic financial institutions to make some adjustments, some corrections, so that hopefully we can realize the true meaning of Islamic finance. I hope my point is clear, because here we talk about the critique to Islamic finance, and this critique is based on evidence after at least about 40 years of operations already or more in Malaysia, how we cannot see much different between having Islamic financial institution and non-Islamic, except in no riba and so on. But what about the social welfare? They don't really address that properly. Now, with the emergence of Islamic social finance, it can be a challenge to Islamic financial institutions to reflect that, and maybe hopefully we'll do some corrections on their part. That's about it for the chapter. Topic 6, talk about riba, Islamic finance, Islamic social finance. And that's also the end of the course. We have covered 6 topics. 6 topics altogether. We start with a topic on Islam, its worldview, and Islamic economics, the definition of Islamic economics. And then in topic 2, we talk about its methodology of Islamic economics. In topic 3, we talk about the characteristics of Islamic economics. And the title of the topic 3 is the Islamic economic system. Topic 4 is about allocation of resources in Islamic economics. That's on topic 4. Topic 5 is on distribution of income and wealth. And the last topic is the current topic that we just finished. So I hope you have learned many things in this course, and hopefully also your understanding from this course would enable you to develop further interest to explore more about Islamic economics and finance. Please continue reading materials related to this course, because this course is still developing for many years coming, right? Because Islamic banking and finance, Islamic economics is something that Muslims, in particular well-trained Muslims like you who attended university, learn it formally, should develop as a profession, as a scholar, as a student of knowledge, to understand more, contribute further to the discipline. I wish all of you all the best in your study and in your future. And insyaAllah, study hard and take care. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.